Hello everyone, and welcome to another beer review. Now, oh God, I'm knackered. I didn't manage to get a couple of videos out last week for a few different reasons. One, I had problems uploading videos for editing, and my system was playing up, and eventually by the time I did manage to get them up, there wasn't any time left to actually get them edited, unfortunately, so they'll come at a later date. And also I had to basically head down to Devon, plus there was a dental emergency that I had to go and get sorted as well, and just to be totally honest, I'm bloody exhausted, you know what I mean? I'm fucking exhausted, I am. And yeah, so, and then you come back up to Scotland and you're still doing things and sorting out the house and changing things about, and you do things and you know it's just going to be a temporary measure until kind of other things get kind of sorted out, and then eventually, you know, you're redoing things that you've already done, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh God, seriously. But anyway, today we're going to be doing a Black Country beer, and we're going to do Black Country Special from Holden's. Black Country born and bred, there you go. And it's 5.1%. Apparently Holden's was established in 1915 by a young boy with many aspirations. I don't know if it's a young boy or not, I don't know, I'm just telling you Willie Pish, to be totally honest. I will put the facts down below, but I don't really know that much about them, you know. I don't know which young boy was involved or not. But I'm sure whoever it was and whatever age they were, I'm sure they had all the aspirations and ambitions in the world, yes. And it says, it's a dark amber premium beer with robust malty overtones and a bitter-sweet full-bodied taste. Brewed using the finest English Maris otter malt and finest English Fuggles hops. The big, beautiful malt, wait a minute, this big, beautiful malty monster is an industrial strength beer at its best. Oh, enjoy with roast beef, chili or cheeseburgers. Piss off. Nope, I'm not putting up with that, I'm sorry, I'm not. Enjoy it with whatever you bloody well want, and if you don't want anything with it, then that's just as good, you know. This, you're going to enjoy it with this. Oh, fuck off, really. But anyway, marvellous. So, it's a 500ml bottle. I'm trying to remember what it cost now. Can't remember. It'll be down below, just like all the other stuff. Right, we'll crack it open and we'll see where it takes us. Might not take us anywhere, but let's see. Well, I'm getting a bit of hops off it, which is might be quite good for a bit of bitterness, hopefully. Put that there. Can you hear the fizz? It's quite fizzy. A lot of effervescence going on there. Right, smelly pews. Yeah. I'm also getting slightly metallic tones. Getting kind of caramel kind of malty tones. Some hops and a little bit of kind of metallic kind of smell as well, which sometimes can come from the water, it can come from the hops. So see what this bugger tastes like. It's dissipating quite quickly, as you can probably see. I've got another camera down here, by the way, if you wonder what I'm doing. And I'm trying it out to see if giving me a different angle either makes me look better or maybe as a, how would you say, an impression of professionalism, which is completely lacking, as we all know. but you never know. I might fool some people. I'll have a sip of this now. It's malty. There's a bit of hoppiness to it. And a little bit of bitterness at the back end, which is actually quite nice. And this was actually bought in Scotland. My goodness. And it's quite fun every time I go to any of the beer aisles. They're either all hanging about the alco pop beers, you know, from these wonderful craft breweries, you know. These beers are so wonderful that they've got to fire fruit into it, you know, because at the end of the day, I know, but beer flavour just isn't enough for us, you know. And yeah. So I look at them as if they're not quite fully men, you know. They're just like, you know, I look at them like young boys, you know. You'll be drinking this stuff when you reach puberty, son, okay? You know, once you get a wee bit of hair down there, you'll be out wanting you want the real stuff after that, you know? Just wind them up. What are you talking about? Shout it. You know, that type of stuff. But yes, and then of course you've got the other plebs on the other side, further down the aisle. They're all going there for that. Oh, should I go for tenets today, or should I go for Perotti or whatever the fucking shit they're looking at? You know, you're thinking, oh my god, you know, I can look at the whole shelf and I think the majority of the beers on there actually taste exactly the fucking same. And that flavour profile starts with the word shite. And you know, and you can see them perusing it as if it's going to be such a big fucking difference. In other words, which label do you like the look of today, sir? Because what's in the bottle is exactly the bloody same. Something that's fucking awful. But anyway, which colour scheme do you fancy going with today? Do you want a bit of red in the label? A little bit of blue? There's some nice beige stuff here. Or do you want to go for the old gaudy red tea on the yellow can? You know, it's like... And then you go there and you see a beer like this, and it's a reason why I'm getting to a point here is that this is actually quite a nice beer. And you have a beer like this, and nobody goes near it, unless it's a twat like me. And it's just really quite scary that you're thinking, Jesus God, that's a load of piss. That's a load of piss. There's some actually nice beers in there, but nobody comes near them. Just right in the middle of the aisle. The only pleb you see standing there perusing them is me. So, maybe that's what puts them off, thinking, oh, don't end up looking like him if you drink them beers, you know. Stay clear. Maybe that's a situation that, that fuckwit. If that's what you look like after drinking them beers, I'll stick with the tenets. Get up, you know. Fair play. You know, so, but yeah, I just find it strange. Head's totally gone now, basically. It's a mill pond. Flat as a witch's tit. Which, of course, we've already discussed before. How flat is a witch's tit? And who started that by thinking, oh, I need to measure this by now. Why? Just in case I want to use it as an analogy, you know. Or is it a synonym? Answers on the postcard to I don't give a fuck. Number 3, fuck you drive. Fuckland. There you go. Marvellous. It's actually quite nice as well. It's quite hoppy. Nice little bit of malt there, nice little bit of sweetness. But overall it's actually quite nice. The mouthfeel isn't as bad as the kind of fizziness sounds we're kind of giving. And sometimes you get that, you know, you're pouring it out and it sounds like Jesus, it's carbonated off its tits. And then you taste it and no, it's actually not too bad actually. It's actually almost quite right, you know, that type of thing. But yeah, there's a nice kind of bit of hoppy bitterness there. So there is. Must have used a heck of a lot of Fuggles, so there is, because Fuggles you do obviously get a bit of bitterness with, but it's not the biggest kind of bittering hops. So unless they're putting other stuff in, like maybe like Challenger or something like that, or, you know, to go along with it or something like that. Or East Kent Goldings is another one. Fuggles usually tends to kind of pair up with either one of them. Or maybe they've gone for the whole shebang of all three, but I'm not feeling that there's kind of much Challenger there or East Kent Gold. It does feel that there's more Fuggles, but it just feels that it's quite a lot. So it is. And you've got to watch with that, because if you try and use Fuggles to try and give you a more bitterness, you run the risk of the kind of slightly coriander kind of effect, or that kind of slightly kind of soapy dishwater kind of accent flavour and kind of feel to the beer, especially in the kind of back of the mid-tongue going to the kind of back of the mouth, which isn't pleasant unless you drink dishwater quite regular, and then it's right up your alley then, isn't it? But yeah, but that's the thing you got to watch out for. So I usually try and dial back the Fuggles and then maybe try and get Challenger in or something like that to kind of balance it out, because it seems to be the two of them together, they don't really give you that kind of soapy kind of back end, you know, that slightly coriander effect. And for people that don't know what I'm talking about with coriander, there's a kind of a genetic condition, funnily enough, that's in relation to your taste buds. There's quite a few different kind of harmless genetic conditions that, you know, some people can't roll their tongue like that, and things, and other kind of strange ones. But one of the other ones is to do with taste buds, that certain flavours can appear kind of fresh and herby to some, but taste kind of soapy and kind of used dishwater kind of feel to others. And coriander is one of them. Hops can be another one, and certain strains of hops and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. So yes, so you can get that with the beer as well, and of course not everybody will get that kind of sensation, but quite a lot of people do. And it's a kind of a little kind of genetic anomaly, you know, amongst people. There you go. Yeah. You'll be sitting there thinking, just tell us what the fucking beer's like, you nonce. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Good play. I'm not going to do it now. You've argued with me now. But yeah, it's quite nice. Break down the flavours. There's a nice kind of night? What the fuck was that about? Anyway, there's a nice little kind of slightly two levels of kind of caramel tones you're getting at the front of the mouth. It's not getting as much as toffee. It's kind of lighter malt, which is fine. That's not a problem. But it's nice enough. The nice intensity. And there's a nice kind of like two layer of it. So there's a kind of slightly lighter caramel layer and a slightly kind of darker caramel layer. And it just gives you a really nice kind of maltiness to start with a nice bit of sweetness. Not so much grain in this one, especially at the front of the mouth. It's kind of lacking a bit of the grain, but there's a nice level of sweetness there, and with the two levels of malt, they just all go really kind of together quite nicely. As for a lighter beer, it's quite nice to have that kind of malt intensity. Normally you would have the grain to kind of slightly balance that up a bit, but it's a bit lighter on the grain, which it's not so bad. It's not so bad, because sometimes the case is that if without that grain, the maltiness can be a bit too much, to the point it becomes too syrupy and just a bit sickening. But no, it's actually just nice. And I would say the balance is almost there. Move on to the kind of the mid-tongue. And that's just at the start of the mid-tongue, that's where you start getting little accents of the hops. So you do. And these little accents kind of match up with the kind of hoppy aroma you were getting when you're smelling it. So when you're just initially smelling the beer, you get these kind of generic, kind of slightly hoppy aromas. And that's where these accents are kind of mimicking, just as you go into the mid-tongue from the front of the mouth. As it moves into the middle of the mid-tongue, these accents become a little bit stronger, a little bit more pronounced, and that's where you start kind of picking up the kind of Fuggle-esque kind of hop tones. And as it moves to the back of the mouth, that's where you start getting the kind of little accents of bitterness. So the back of the mid-tongue, that's where the accents of bitterness really start to kind of come through. And they just kind of gravitate a little bit towards the kind of back of the mouth and the aftertaste. And they linger a little bit, but overall it's quite a clean finishing beer, or ale, depending on what you want to call it. But there's a little bit of lingering of the bitterness, which just actually makes it a bit, for me, a bit more enjoyable, and also just makes it a bit more interesting as well. So it's quite good from that point of view. And yeah, it's a bit unusual. Not this style of beer, but it's just a bit unusual that a lot of times that I've noticed is that you don't get so much, going from the kind of bitterness point of view, a lot of times you get a bit of bitterness at the back end, especially in these kind of southern bitters and things like that, and there's a bit of bitterness and things like that, but there's not really much there. But there's also not really much of the hops going on as well. But then other times you get it where there's a decent bit of bitterness at the back end, but again, you're not really getting up. One of the biggest problems I've noticed a lot with kind of traditional beers over the last maybe 5 years is a lot of times for you to get kind of hoppy tones in a beer, they tend to be more kind of from the citrus side, so they start to kind of obviously put in New World hops to try and give it a citrus bent. Whereas previously you would have probably got a more kind of floral kind of style hop flavour in the mid-tongues. And that, I'd say the last 5 years, it is starting to kind of disappear. Obviously in some it's still the same. If you look at it, a lot of the kind of traditional breweries in the Isle of Wight, they're still very kind of floral. I mean, it's the old joke that the Isle of Wight's kind of stuck in the 1950s. From the beer point of view, that's probably true, but that isn't a bad thing. It's quite nice to have that little bit of kind of floralness, that type of thing, you know, and a little bit of bitterness to kind of match it in. Whereas nowadays you get more of a citrus kind of hoppy flavour in the mid-tongue, and then you don't really get a bitterness, you get more of a sourness, and you get a kind of slightly piney edge at the back end. And that seems to be the kind of trend, especially with even traditional brewers trying to produce a kind of a slightly more hoppier kind of bitter edge beer. But they're not really getting the bitterness, they're getting more of a kind of piney sourness. And again, with the citrus and everything else, and it really does detract from like the more kind of traditional beer profile. Whereas this one is nicer. You're not maybe getting the floral, but you are getting the kind of Fuggle-esque kind of flavour tones of the hops, which is nice to have. And you're getting that kind of bitterness at the end. Getting maybe a one-dimensional bitterness because it feels like it seems to be more Fuggles than anything else. But it's still nicer to have if you're looking on the basis of what beers are like that I've been tasting probably over the last 5 years, except, you know, from say the Isle of Wight and some other exceptions. So this is the thing that will also kind of, if you're into more kind of traditional beers, this actually really does kind of stand out and is kind of unique by being more traditional. So yeah, it's unusual nowadays because it has more of a traditional bent. And yeah, especially also in the mid-tongue, just maybe getting this ever so slight little honey tones on the mid-tongue as well. Overall, it's actually a very pleasant beer, it really is. And I just think it's shocking that you got a beer of this kind of standard and quality, and nobody goes near it. It's just, and because of that, people not going near it. Eventually, these beers will be dropped by the supermarkets because people aren't really buying them, and then they won't be available in Scotland. They may be available in other areas of the UK, but you know, if they're not really, people aren't really buying them, then they're not going to stock them, like in Scotland and things like that. And then that's another good beer lost. And then they'll replace it with, well, another shitty craft beer with, oh, it tastes of strawberries and fucking meringues, and or it's got basically, oh, it's another lager, because lagers are so wonderful, and of course, for some strange reason, they can't seem to get it right that they have to make so fucking many of them. You know, you've got all these big conglomerate breweries, not one of them can make one decent fucking lager between them, you know, and they have to have so many attempts with so many different brand names and labels and everything else, and they still can't get it right, but the fuckers will keep buying it. They'll keep fucking buying it. Oh, it's a new one. It tastes like the last one, but fuck it, it's a new label. You know, and you're thinking. And it's beers like this that suffer. So maybe that's why a lot of more kind of traditional breweries are shying away from these type of beers now, is because they're saying that there isn't so much of a future in producing these type of beers unless, you know, there's a change. We're a dying breed. We're the dinosaurs now. Which, to be totally honest, the way the beer kind of industry is going, I'm quite happy to die out and become extinct, because I sure as I wouldn't want, I'd hate to be omnipotent. Oh, I really would, seriously. Imagine that. I'm watching the decay of decent beer and, you know, more shit coming through. You're thinking, oh my God, seriously. I'd give up beer, I really would. I could probably see it. I'm in my 50s now, there's probably a good chance by the time I get to my kind of late 60s, early 70s, I've probably given up beer, and it'd be more of a struggle to try and find a decent beer, because it's just going to be supermarkets are just going to be a wash of just bottles of piss water and cans of piss water, and at that point, no, I'll give up. I'll either make my own, or, well, this is a big problem as you get older. It becomes more of a faff to make your own, that's the problem. And then you'll be looking at it thinking, well, I usually just open a bottle of whiskey or something like that, or a bottle of wine or something, you know. I like wine, I like whiskey, I like most drinks. The one I don't really get on well with is tequila, because it always gives me a right kick in the next day. And it's not a headache or that type of stuff, it just gives me a real kind of, a horrible aftertaste the next day. So it does, it just kind of lingers in the back of the throat. And also, stomach-wise, you know, it feels like the day after me having a good session on tequila is like basically being on a permanent roller coaster for the next bloody 24 hours, because it just feels, you know, butterfly kind of light stomach kind of sensation all the time. I think, what was that about? And your stomach just doesn't quite settle, you know. It's like after being on a roller coaster and you come off and you think, Jesus, things haven't calmed down there yet, you know, and it's like that. So yeah, I may have to start kind of planning out my kind of future kind of drinking schedules and future kind of drink options as well, because unfortunately beers like this are going to be a dying breed. So anyway, what would I give this out of 10? I actually quite like this, I really do. It's nice to have the hoppiness without the citrus. And it's also something a bit different, that you're not getting the kind of, you know, ubiquitous kind of, from the past, the kind of floral notes. Which, at one point there was a flurry, you were getting that quite a lot in kind of golden ales and amber ales. But that trend kind of changed over the last 5 years. It used to be maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, you'd buy a golden ale and it'd be kind of floral kind of hoppiness. And same with some amber ales as well, whereas now it's starting to kind of more go towards kind of slight citrus bent and things like this. So they're swapping out hops now, probably the same beer, same recipe, but they're swapping out the hops out for kind of more New World style hops, just to give that kind of citrus bent, and hopefully it'll attract kind of stragglers who haven't fully committed to the craft beer fraternity, you know. That cult, I did say cult, but if it sounds like something else, then it's probably close enough, you know. But yes, out of 10, what would I give this? I'm torn between 6.5 and 7. But if I'm right, I'm sure this is actually over £2, if I remember rightly. I'll be able to tell you. I'll put it down below. So because of that, if it was the £2 or under, then I'd probably give it a 7, but I'm going to knock half a point off because I'm sure it's actually over the £2 mark, which I know it's maybe not so fair because obviously with pricing have been changed and everything else, and yeah, most beers are starting to go over above the £2 mark. But yeah, no bugger. I'll be fair then. I'll give it a 7. But it's borderline between 6.5 and 7. But I'll give it a 7. It's actually quite a nice beer, and I like the hoppiness, and I just like it, that kind of more traditional feel to it. So if you like a more traditional feel and you like a bit of kind of traditional hoppy flavour with a nice kind of bitterness at the back end and some nice malt levels and things like that, yeah, you can't go wrong with this. So it's 5.1%, it's a 500ml bottle, it's Holden's Black Country Special, and it's 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching, cheers, and bye for now.